Most careers don't break at the beginning. They stall after onboarding ends. The structure fades, expectations blur, and suddenly the responsibility to grow becomes personal. At the same time, work is changing faster than ever. AI is reshaping roles, hybrid teams are redefining trust, and pressure is being managed, not always well. This series isn't about motivation, and it isn't about surviving hustle culture. It's about what actually helps individuals stay effective, adaptable, and mentally ready after the first 90 days. We'll explore how people create clarity when guidance is thin, how they build skills that matter in an AI-accelerated workplace, and how they protect their energy without disengaging. Because being mission-ready isn't a personality trait, it's a way of working, one that can be designed. This is Mission Ready, thriving as an individual in the age of AI. Burnout rarely announces itself as failure. Deadlines are still met, work continues, performance looks acceptable on paper. That's what makes burnout hard to see. Capable employees often burn out before anything looks wrong. They compensate quietly. They absorb uncertainty. They work around problems instead of surfacing them. Metrics don't move because people are holding the system together. This is why burnout rarely shows up as errors, missed deadlines, or visible decline at first. Exhaustion accumulates beneath stable output. By the time disengagement becomes visible, the burnout has already taken hold. This episode begins where burnout actually starts, not with collapse, but with sustained strain that goes unnoticed because nothing appears broken. Burnout is commonly blamed on effort, long hours, heavy workloads, constant pressure. But effort alone does not explain why burnout shows up even when people are capable, committed, and still performing. What drains energy faster than work is uncertainty. Not knowing which priorities matter most. Not knowing whether today's work will still be relevant tomorrow. Not knowing when to escalate and when to absorb risk. Sustained ambiguity forces people to make hundreds of micro decisions without reliable reference points. That cognitive load accumulates even when output remains steady. Working harder can mask burnout for a time. People compensate, they push through. But rest alone doesn't resolve ambiguity. When people return to the same uncertainty, the energy drain resumes. Burnout persists not because people lack endurance, but because the system keeps asking them to work without clear orientation. Energy drains fastest when people don't know where to focus. Not because they're lazy, but because uncertainty forces constant decision-making. When priorities are unclear, every task becomes a judgment call. What matters most today? What can wait? What will be questioned later? These micro-decisions accumulate. Even when output stays steady, cognitive load increases. People revisit work. They second-guess choices. They hold multiple interpretations of success in their head at once. This is how ambiguity turns effort into friction. The work itself may not be heavier, but the cost of deciding never goes away. Over time, that friction drains energy long before performance declines. This is why burnout often follows unclear direction, not because people work too hard, but because they worked without reliable focus. Burnout is often treated as a result of disengagement. People stop caring, they pull back, they withdraw. In reality, the order is usually reversed. Burnout comes first, disengagement follows. Before people withdraw, they try to compensate. They push through uncertainty. They absorb ambiguity. They make extra decisions to keep things moving. Over time, that sustained effort drains energy and erodes judgment. Disengagement is not indifference. It's a protective response after energy is depleted. This is why quiet disengagement is a late-stage symptom, not an early signal. By the time engagement scores move, the burnout has already occurred. Treating disengagement as the cause means responding too late. Recognizing burnout first creates the opportunity to correct earlier, while energy and trust still exist. Most burnout does not show up as visible failure. People don't stop working, they stop investing. Quiet disengagement is not rebellion or refusal, it's drift. People stay busy, tasks get completed, meetings are attended, but initiative narrows, curiosity fades, and discretionary effort disappears. This is why leaders often miss the early stages of disengagement. Nothing looks wrong, output continues. The difference is internal. People stop taking risks, they stop raising questions, they stop offering early signals. What looks like reliability is often self-protection. Quiet disengagement is a late-stage symptom of burnout, not a choice and not a capability problem. By the time disengagement becomes visible, energy has already been depleted for some time. Wellness programs are often introduced with good intentions. They offer tools for resilience, stress management, and recovery. But wellness programs are not designed to fix the conditions that create burnout. Burnout is rarely a personal resilience gap. It is more often the result of sustained ambiguity, unclear priorities, and repeated compensation for system failures. Wellness treats symptoms. It helps people cope with the energy drain. It does not reduce the cognitive load created by unclear direction. It does not resolve competing demands. And it does not remove the need to constantly decide what matters most. When organizations rely on wellness as the primary response to burnout, they unintentionally shift system problems onto individuals. This creates a quiet message: adapt better to ambiguity rather than fix the ambiguity itself. Wellness is supportive, but burnout is corrected by redesigning work, not by asking people to recover from it repeatedly. Burnout is often treated as something that went wrong, a breakdown, a failure, a personal limit reached. But burnout is better understood as information. It tells you something about how work is designed and where strain is accumulating. Burnout tends to cluster in specific roles, teams, or functions. That pattern matters. It often points to unclear scope, where responsibilities expand without clear boundaries. It points to conflicting priorities, where people are asked to optimize for competing outcomes at the same time. And it points to unresolved risk, where problems are carried forward instead of corrected early. Burnout does not appear randomly. It surfaces where systems require sustained compensation. Reading burnout as data allows organizations to diagnose the real issue, not who is struggling, but what the system is demanding without resolution. Burnout rarely begins with disengagement. It usually begins with plateau. Learning slows, work starts to repeat, initiative narrows to what feels safe and familiar. Nothing looks broken, but nothing is advancing either. Plateau is easy to miss because output often remains steady. People keep delivering. What changes is where energy goes. Curiosity fades. Experimentation declines. Effort shifts from building forward to maintaining position. This is why plateau is the earliest visible warning sign. It appears before withdrawal, before missed expectations, and long before disengagement becomes visible. Addressing plateau early protects energy. It restores momentum before burnout hardens into quiet disengagement. Performance metrics are designed to measure output. They are not designed to measure energy. In the early stages of burnout, output often remains stable. Deadlines are met, work continues, targets are hit. This is because people compensate. They work around ambiguity. They absorb extra decisions. They put in discretionary effort to keep results steady. That compensation hides burnout. Dashboards stay green while energy is being spent faster than it's restored. Metrics only move after compensation fails, when exhaustion reaches a point where people can no longer make up the difference. This is why burnout often appears to leadership without warning. The warning signs were present, they just weren't measured. Burnout conversations at work often start with concern. Are you okay? It's a well-intentioned question, but it rarely leads to meaningful correction. Burnout is not a question of endurance. It's a question of scope, priorities, and unresolved risk. When burnout is framed as a personal condition, people become defensive. They minimize, they reassure, they absorb more instead of asking for correction. Productive burnout conversations focus on work design. What feels unclear? Where are demands competing? What risks keep getting deferred? These questions surface system strain without assigning blame. Reframing burnout this way reduces stigma, lowers defensiveness, and allows correction while energy still exists. Burnout does not recover because people try harder, and it does not resolve simply because they rest. Energy returns when ambiguity is reduced. When priorities are clarified, people stop making unnecessary decisions. When rework is reduced, effort stops being wasted. When correction happens earlier, problems stop compounding quietly. These changes don't motivate people, they remove friction. This is why restoring energy is a design problem, not a motivation issue. High performers don't need encouragement to care more. They need systems that allow their effort to land cleanly without constant compensation. When work is redesigned to reduce ambiguity, energy returns naturally, not as enthusiasm, but as capacity. Burnout is often treated as a personal weakness, a lack of resilience, a failure to cope, a boundary problem. But burnout is better understood as a system signal. It appears when ambiguity persists, when priorities conflict, and when risk is carried forward instead of corrected early. Fixing people does not fix burnout. Coaching endurance does not restore energy, and resilience training cannot compensate indefinitely for unclear direction. Burnout is predictable in systems that rely on silence and sustained compensation to keep performance stable. Silence drains energy. Ambiguity drains energy. Over time, that drain becomes visible as exhaustion, withdrawal, or attrition. The core shift is simple. If burnout is widespread, it is not a personal problem. It is a design problem, and design problems require system correction. Burnout does not resolve simply because pressure pauses. Time off can provide relief, but relief does not change the system people return to. Recovery requires redesign. It requires restoring clarity, resetting priorities, and removing the conditions that drained energy in the first place. Without redesign, people come back rested and burn out again. In the next episode, we focus on what it takes to reset momentum after burnout, how organizations rebuild trust, how energy is restored sustainably, and how work is redesigned so effort compounds again instead of draining quietly. Episode 7 is not about relief. It's about rebuilding momentum that can hold.